Welcome to Workplace Psychology with Dr. Martha Greidick. I'm Dr. Martha Greidick. This podcast examines a wide variety of work-related issues through the lens of industrial and organizational psychology. And while many of the topics discussed here may be seen as intended for white-collar employees and their employers, in reality, the ideas presented here are applicable across organizations and industries. Additionally, many of the topics discussed here may be applicable outside of the workplace. I encourage you to examine what's presented here, apply what makes sense to you, and simply discard the rest. Everyone has the right to rest. That means resting every day, whether resting includes sleep or simply resting by not working or engaging in some kind of fun activity. Resting could also mean taking time off from work and taking a vacation. So whatever rest means, as it clearly has more than one definition, all of which are correct. The point is that every single person has the right to rest on a regular basis. And this may sound like a very simplistic and obvious statement, but you might be surprised how many people seem to forget that they too have the right to rest. And as a result, they seem to forgo resting on a regular basis. So why would we not rest like we should, like we know we should? Well, it could be so many different things. It could simply be your work ethic, where you feel like you need to work all the time and work harder every time you have a go at it and never let up. Or it could be expectations, the expectations of your boss or your employer. It could be things such as deadlines, maybe project deadlines or end of quarter or end of year deadlines. Maybe you're simply shorthanded at work and you have been stuck with more work than you can handle, and as a result, you forgo your rest. It may simply be a habit of yours to keep going without taking proper rest. Maybe you feel guilt about proper self-care. And for some, it may be a matter of job security. The idea that if you don't constantly work at your top speed, that somebody else can take your position, that you can be easily replaced. But the reality is that you have to rest regularly. That means every single day. And not only is this for your general well-being, but it's also part of being able to perform well at work. If you're not rested, you're not well. And if you're not rested and not well, you can't perform to the best of your abilities because your abilities become diminished. While there's plenty of research to support our need to rest, it doesn't take a genius to figure out that we all need to rest every single day. So now, knowing that you need to rest, but yet somehow many of us forgo proper rest, what is the solution? What is the fix to this? Well, it's no surprise. You have to be proactive. Things don't fix themselves on their own. You have to be proactive about changing this way of being, this habit, this way of doing things where you're not getting enough rest, to actually shifting your way of being, shifting your way of doing things to where you do start to rest properly and regularly. You may have to change habits and expectations. And these may be your own habits and expectations, but they could also be the habits and expectations of others around you, whether that's your employer or someone outside of work. Make sure that you allow yourself to take baby steps. Things often don't change overnight, especially if they've been the way of being or the way of doing things for a long time. So allow yourself the time to make this switch, to make this transition. Remember that you're a human being. You're not a robot. Just because you have a job and just because you're expected to perform doesn't mean that you're not human anymore. So remember that you're a human being and not a robot. Pay attention to your thoughts and your beliefs. Those can affect what you do. This can also be true for the thoughts and beliefs of others, and while you can't necessarily control them or know them all, it's important to realize that there is more than one contributing factor when it comes to this problem of not resting enough. Something that is simple but may not be so easy to do is not working during your time off. Again, this may take time and effort. Something where you have to be proactive, but don't work after hours, don't work on the weekends, don't work during the holidays or when you're on vacation. You have to be proactive and deliberate in making changes. So this is a good place to start. Don't be afraid to say no to extra projects or extra tasks, especially when they would lead to your inability to rest on a regular basis the way you should be able to. It may be difficult to believe at first, but over-delivering is a trap. You've probably heard the term under-promise, over-deliver as a way of impressing customers or impressing your employer. But in reality, that's a terrible, terrible trap. Nothing will get you away from taking time to rest and care for yourself faster than this belief that you have to over-deliver with everything that you do. Show yourself some compassion. We tend to be more compassionate towards others sometimes than we are towards ourselves. So remember that when it comes to making a change, especially one that is a long time coming, maybe one that's strongly rooted in what you've been doing for a long time, you have to give yourself a break, be compassionate towards yourself, and don't forget to enlist the help of others. That may be others at the office, at the workplace, or others outside of the workplace. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Be persistent. Making one change one time is not likely to overturn what you've been doing for a long time, maybe even years. So give yourself the time and be persistent. With time and effort, you can change any habit. As this episode comes to an end, let's review what was discussed. You have the right to rest on a regular basis, on an everyday basis, but for so many different reasons, many of us forget to do that and forget to take advantage of this basic right. Whatever the reasons, it's critical to be proactive in changing this way of being, changing this habit. Take baby steps and give yourself some time, but make sure that you're paying attention to things like expectations and habits, maybe even your thoughts and your beliefs. Those will play a big role in what you do every day and whether or not you allow yourself to take a rest the way that you need to every single day. Don't work during time off. That means after hours, on the weekends, during holidays, and during your vacation. And don't be afraid to say no to extra tasks and extra projects. And remember that you can ask others for help. Those could be others within the organization or those outside of work. And remember to be compassionate towards yourself. Behaviors that have been part of our reality for a while may be difficult to change and may take time to change, but certainly with time, effort, and persistence, you can achieve your goals of changing behaviors that have not served you. Remember that you have the right to rest, and it is in your best interest to rest on a regular basis. As the week unfolds, I invite you to examine your own situation. Are you resting on a regular basis, or are you guilty of some of the things discussed in this episode? Are you working after hours or during your vacation or during holidays? Do you feel guilty about taking time off? Are your employer's expectations such that it makes it difficult for you to take time off from work. This is an important topic to discuss, something to assess in terms of your own experience, and something that is worthy of a conversation, certainly with your employer, if the situation is that it calls for that discussion, certainly with family members, if you think that their input is important. But it's definitely something that requires some contemplation and some soul searching. So I invite you this week to take some time to do that. It's so easy to forget the basics, the very simple things, and you absolutely do have the right and, more importantly, the need to rest every single day. So make sure that you take a look at this concept and whether or not you are actually resting every day and resting properly, or if you are caught up in the productivity hamster wheel or whatever else it may be, whether it's guilt, whether it's old habits, whatever it is. If it's not serving you, then it's time to revise it. It's time to change it. So take this week to think about it and then take the necessary steps to make the kinds of changes that will benefit you in the long run. For those of you who experience this podcast in an audio-only version, I invite you to check out my YouTube channel where you can find the video version of the podcast. The link for that is in the description below, and that's Stress Free with Dr. G. In addition to the video version of the podcast, my YouTube channel also contains videos that focus on stress management, so I invite you to check that out. Thank you for joining me today. Please subscribe to this podcast. I look forward to seeing you here again next time. Until then, I wish you joy and well-being.